Hollis, New Hampshire. We're here for an impromptu visit with Barbara Schwartz of Impromptu Collies. This is Monday, September 7th, 1992. Well, we're at the Impromptu Farm Homestead, and I'm here with Barbara Schwartz. I'm Hal Sundstrom. Our videographer is Kathy Peters. Barbara, it's a pleasure to be with you today. You began in Collies a few years ago. We both know that. When? Where? Can you tell us a little bit about how you got the interest?
I read Albert Payson Terhune when I was 7. Got my first collie when I was 8, Monty, who I had all the way through high school and most of college. And when we got married, Marty wanted an Old English sheepdog, and I wanted a collie, so we got a Blue Merle collie. And Clifford really is the start. That was in 1961.
1961. When did you become a breeder? When did you really have an active interest in breeding collies?
We met the Honecks when we moved to New England in 1962, and they basically got us hooked in that we took Clifford to a couple of dog shows and he won blue ribbons, and that got us started. I bought a bitch to be bred to Clifford like everyone else does. I looked at his pedigree and I imported a bitch to be bred to Clifford, and she didn't look like the dogs that I'd seen at the dog show that I liked. And Georgia was eventually sold as a pet. And when we moved to New York, which was in 1964, I met Edith Levine, and I liked the looks of Edith's dogs. And a girl by the name of Sue Marenbach had a litter out of a litter sister to champion Bayberry Mr. Ben, Brandon Bayberry Mr. Ben, and by Glen Knowles Knightswood Sky, and I bought that bitch. That was Crown Royal Midnight Mood, and that was my foundation bitch. But I was smart enough not to ever breed a litter prior to that bitch because I didn't like what I had.
Barbara, you mentioned Edith. In the course of doing these breeder profiles, one question that I always ask, and you partially answered that, obviously the collie didn't begin with us. You've mentioned Edith. Is there another breeder or fancier that has been instrumental in giving you your start, both in terms of your knowledge and starting your line?
There were a lot of people who contributed, but the major tutelage that I had was through Edith Levine. I think how my dogs were brought up, how I raised them, how I kenneled them, the pattern of my feeding, the pattern of my everyday existence with the dogs, in addition to my eye for the dog of what I like, was Edith's doing. And actually, I think the study of the collie was from Edith. But there have been a lot of other people, Florence Cummings, Sam Hearn, who most of you would not know about, who was an all-breed judge, Dot Girth, Steve Fields, Bobby Roos. There's just been an incredible number of people, and there continue to be an incredible number of people.
You've mentioned starting in the breed here in the East, and especially New England. You've done a little bit of traveling. I know for a fact you had an Oklahoma experience.
Yeah.
Were your first dog show experiences, well, they were here in the East, but then you transferred. Why did you go to Oklahoma?
Okay. My first showing experiences were all in the East. And we got to know most of the Eastern breeders. Martin did his graduate work here in New England, in Boston. We're originally from Michigan.
Oh,
We're originally from Detroit. And so he did his graduate work here in Boston. And from Boston, he did his residency and internship in New York. And so we were transferred to New York. And then, of course, this was during the Nam-War, and he was drafted after his medical training, and we were stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And we were there for 2.5 years. And then we came back east. So we have bounced around a lot.
obvious question. Impromptu.
Well, anyone who knows me that knows that my entire life is impromptu. I mean, things happen to me just instantaneously, spur of the moment. And of course, Martin is a musician, and so he does improvisations, jazz musician. I was an English teacher, had the kids write improvisations. But, I mean, I plan my disasters because things happen around here so fast that the ones that are unplanned, you know, take up all my time. It's just the lifestyle that we have. I think there's this cloud over our head.
Well, when did you first use impromptu as a kennel prefix?
I believe the first impromptu collie was repartee, but I had picked out the name way before that. But it was the first one that I bred.
Well, of course, when we think of impromptu, you mentioned repartee, and we think of dogs like Ricochet and Burnt Norton. Obviously, they're from the past. Today we think of Buster, Banner Still Waves, who I believe was winner's dog at Detroit at the National Specialty. I've thrown a few names out. What do you think of when I mention these names? And you're probably going to want to bring up some other names of impromptu dogs.
Well, I think everybody is allowed to have their one perfect dog that has no faults. Every breeder's allowed one. And of course, repartee was mine. She was everything that I was looking for in a collie. I think she probably still is. All of the others have had faults. I think probably the best male I ever owned was Champion Impromptu Mingus Dynasty, who died at 2. Others that I liked a great deal was Champion Impromptu Kudos. Kudos was a dog ahead of his time. Wasn't used that much from outside bitches, but he was an incredibly beautiful, but I would say for the time, small dog. He's probably bigger than what's being shown today, but he was a small dog for the time. And Champion Impromptu Instant Carmen, who probably was one of the prettiest headed dogs I ever knew in my life.
We're going to see some pictures of these dogs a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I did want to discuss some of that. And Barbara, you're a consummate dog person and a consummate collie person.
What does that mean?
Well, I know personally, and as do many in the fancy, that you, in my 2 decades in the breed, you've been a writer, you've been a district director for the Collie Club of America. You have been very instrumental in identifying and publicizing health problems, health concerns of our breed, but also I certainly remember the fine work you did in alerting the entire dog world to the problems of parvo.
Yeah.
When parvovirus first burst on the scene. You today are a member of the Collie Club of America Health Committee. This is kind of a rambling introduction to the subject, but
okay,
I'd like you to step back, or to go back, if you will, and let's turn back to, I think it was at Louisville where parvo first raised its...
No, that was not parvo. It was corona. And the collie did not invent Corona. It had been around for a while. We had the unfortunate experience of having a great number of dogs from all over the country come together in one building. And Corona is a cold weather virus. It does best in cold weather. And it was very cold in Louisville that year. And we were there for a long period of time, and it incubated. And of course we got hit with it. And of course this is when the health committee got started, because there was no health committee at that point. And I brought home 2 dogs who never came down with the disease, and I had them isolated. But my entire kennel came down with it. And one of the dogs who came down with it, I had very badly, the first one who came down with it, I took to my vet, and he treated it and sent it home better. And I had isolated it, put it downstairs in one of the box stalls in the barn, and went down that morning to discover it dead. And, I was so calm. I yelled and screamed at my veterinarian, got him out of the shower, made him come over, pick up the dog, and he took the remains up to the state vet in New Hampshire. And we got in touch with Dr. Carmichael at Cornell, and he told us what body parts he wanted, and we shipped it out to him, and it was in that dog that Corona was identified. Dear Dr. Carmichael, he calls it the Schwartz virus. I love him. And in essence, it was a committee that got founded because of the problem. We called it the Severe Hemorrhagic Intestinal Toxicity Committee, because that's what we dealt with, if you figure out the letters. And we formed this bond all over the country, and everyone was very open about it. All of the Collie people were very open about it, because we didn't know what we were dealing with and how to handle it, and any little information that we could give one another was very helpful. And although it was a horrible tragedy and some incredibly beautiful dogs were lost, it proved to be probably a blessing in disguise, because Collie people became very open about their problems because of it, and they came to trust us. Dr. Carmichael had received blood from all over the country because of the Corona infection. And we started hearing about a virus that was being found in Texas, or the strain that was not the same symptoms as Corona, but had its own set of symptoms, and did not sound like what we had been battling. And Texas A&M identified parvo virus for the first time, and Cornell was sent their samples, and of course they identified parvo too. And that's how we got to know it was a new virus, because Dr. Carmichael had all of this Collie blood from all over the country that had been sent to him because of the Corona, and went back and could find no titers in it to parvo. So we almost know when that virus started.
Now, I understand that the American Kennel Club contacted was it you?
Yeah.
And what was their concern?
It was our virus.
It was our virus?
Oh, well, with Corona, I think it was Matt Sandler from the Dog News who said that I was the Corona was a figment of some crazy Collie breeder in New Hampshire.
What does he say today?
He doesn't say much about it at all today, particularly after parvo hit. I mean, that kind of united the entire dog world. And I think that people became very open about their problems. None of these problems are new that we're facing in the Collie. But everybody used to be hush-hush about it.
Right. Well, now, AKC's concern when they contacted you, obviously you straightened them out. Did the AKC subsequently do anything in the way of research funds?
I believe they sent a great deal of research funds to Dr. Carmichael, and I think the Collie Club of America did too. I think we gave him money for work on the vaccine, and Dr. Carmichael used my dogs as guinea pigs. We were drawing blood on them constantly and giving them, I think first we gave them cat vaccine, and then they had everything. They were constantly being shot.
Well, the dog fancy owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to you for your work there. I wish time would permit us to really
that's
elaborate.
very kind of you.
But now in your your present incarnation as health committee chair.
Yeah.
What are your problems? What are your concerns? What are your goals for the committee?
All right. I think that we have problems, yes. Are they more or less or different than any other breed? No. My concern is to help those breeders who have problems as best we can, to send them to the right people, because no one person can know everything about all the problems that anyone will ever run into. And it's also, I think, to publicize the fact that the Collie is an extremely healthy, active, long-lived animal that is a wonderful pet, and that is the primary breed. I mean, that's why I got into it. It's sound of mind and body. We have some problems, things that we can test for and check for, but primarily we're a very healthy breed. I mean, we are a large breed that lives longer than any other dog of comparable size. And that, I think, is one of the things that has to be publicized. We've had an awful lot of people, because we are so open about our problems, who've gone around publicizing the Collie has this problem, or the Collie is that, or we're a weak genetic breed. We really are not. We're a very strong, hardy animal.
Agreed. The video that we're making today is going to be shared with our fancy. You've got a chance right now to direct a question or a request. If anyone has anything on their mind, what should they do?
If they have a problem, the best thing to do is to first get it diagnosed, to find out what you're really dealing with. You can contact me, and if I don't have the answer, which I probably will not, at least I'll be able to send you to people who will ask you the right questions. Will we have the answers in all cases? No. Do we know the genetic and mode of inheritance of a lot of problems? No, we have no idea. Do we know if some of these problems are environmentally caused? We're beginning to believe so. I don't want people to think that every problem that an individual Collie has is a breed problem.
Someone's calling you right now.
As usual.
Representative and typical. That
Typical
phone
telephone.
rings.
Yes, I want to hang up my shingle if I could get referral costs. Need referrals.
You've bred for approximately 3 decades.
Yeah.
I know, having been in the Branlin line, very familiar with your line, of course. What do you feel are the qualities of your dogs? What do you look for in the Collie?
First thing I look for is temperament, because the dog has to be a friend, and it has to be a Collie, and that's the temperament. That's why, I read Albert Pacer interview, and I wanted my dogs to be as smart as his dogs, and that was why I went into Collies, because of the temperament. Then they have to be beautiful, and this beauty has to be of head and body. I will not live with an unsound dog, but I also couldn't live with an ugly-headed dog. So it has to be a combination of these things. I want style, I want elegance, but I also want movement.
You've been successful in retaining your line and your type. How have you done this?
Culling. And
what does that mean to those of us that may be new to this breed, or novices, if you will?
Being very critical. Being able to say that this dog has that fault, or this has to be, bred out for. There are certain traits that I won't allow in the line. One of them being a deep head, because I don't think you could ever get rid of it. But I think that you have to maintain an objectivity toward the dogs. And I think my first dogs that I ever had, that was very difficult because I was so emotionally involved with each individual that to think that there was something that this dog could or couldn't do was very hard to separate myself. Through the years, I think the line has become more important to me than perhaps each individual dog, although, I love each individual dog. I play with them. They're part of my family. But the overall look and what they can contribute as an artist, each color that they can add to the painting is very important. And never losing sight of what that image is. What I want in a collie, no matter what the fads are that are going around. And I think that's very important.
Well, in our relationship and the years that we've known each other, I've never known you, and those that know you have never known you to back away. I'll put you on the spot.
Okay.
What do you think of the Collie today? Where is the breed today? Are we better? Are we worse?
Are
we standing still?
I think that the overall Collie today is perhaps a little better than when I started. I think that there are an awful lot of safe breeders who breed cookie cutter dogs that there is no distinction between them. Therefore, you don't have the great dog. And the great dog always stands out as being different. He doesn't look like everybody else's dog. I think our biggest problem is that we have a number of people in collies today who either are in Shelties or who came out of Shelties or have gone into Shelties, and the distinction between the two breeds are blurring. I think our dogs are much too fine-boned that I see in the ring. They're much too Sheltie-like, too small. A collie is about, if you read our standard, a collie is the same size as a shepherd, a boxer, a Doberman. And if you looked at most of the males in the ring today, they nowhere are comparable in size to these animals. I brought in a 25-inch collie into the ring, and people think he's huge, and actually he's right within standard.
26, right?
Yeah, he's right in the middle of the standard. And it's interesting because I have a friend, my best friend is in Great Danes, and so we have wickets, and she's forever measuring because they have minimums. And we have put the wickets on my dogs. And most people will tell you my dogs look big, but they're really not. There isn't one dog that's oversized in the whole kennel. Either dog or bitch.
Earlier in conversation off camera, you mentioned a phrase that sticks in my mind: the best advice one can give another.
Oh, you mean about perspective?
Right.
Well, I can't say that it's mine originally, but it was from Florence, Cummings, and Edith Levine, that one should never place one's dogs before one's family, one's mate, husband, wife, that they have a place in your life, but they cannot become your life. And I always laugh, I always say that I am Impromptu Kennels, Impromptu Collies. But Impromptu Collies are not Barbara Schwartz. And there's a distinction.
Barbara, that's quite a remarkable philosophy, and I thank you for sharing that with us. I think now I'd like to turn to some photos of the Impromptu Collies.
Okay. I'll get those out. No?
Martin Schwartz has joined us, and Martin and Barbara will be showing us some of the impromptu dogs, the past. Presumably we have the present?
Yeah, we have a couple. Okay. First picture is Crown Royal Midnight Mood Maggie, who is our foundation bitch. And this is pictured when she was 10 years old. You remember that? Alright. And this is champion impromptu repartee at 3 months of age. She was by champion Glenn Noah's Flash Lightning out of Crown Royal Midnight Mood. And this is repartee and her 2 litter sisters, Archelon's Miss Perfidy and champion impromptu Hocus Pocus. And of course, the 4th one in that litter of 8 was champion impromptu Burnt Norton. And this was champion impromptu repartee at her first major, where she won her first major under Orrin Kem at the Collie Club of Arizona. She was 6 months old. This is the only judge that repartee did not stand and stare at me. She was fascinated by Orrin for some reason. Thought he was the best thing that ever happened to her. Snapped in the wind. This was champion impromptu repartee winning the Futurity, Collie Club of America Futurity in 1967 in San Mateo. And I think she's the last collie to have gone best of winners at the National and who have won the Futurity. She was 10 months old in this picture. And of course, this is Marty's famous head study.
Now, having said that, Martin has considerable fame. Were you a CCVA photographer?
I agreed to do the slides one year for the CC of A. I had very limited photography experience, and the photography came because when I went to dog shows and tried to help Barbara, that's all I got was yelled at. So I brought a camera one dog show, and I kept myself busy that way, and it was sort of fun. So after very, very little experience, I ended up doing the slides for one of the CCA. That particular picture, the head study, was a snapshot, and it just had a nice picture of a head on it. So we enlarged the head, and it's been one of Barbara's
That's a great
regulars.
shot.
This was the same dog show. This was at Windham County when Snack was second in the group. And that was at the same day we did those pictures. This is champion impromptu Burnt Norton. And this was repartee's litter brother, who I sold to Gene Cullen and then leased him back after champion impromptu Mingus Dynasty died. And Tommy Cohen took him out. It was the day that Tommy got his handling license. He took off for Pennsylvania for his first judging assignment. There was a specialty on Saturday and the Philadelphia All Breed on Sunday. Norton won the breed on Saturday and went best in show at the Philadelphia All Breed on Sunday for Tommy's first weekend as a professional handler. This is champion impromptu repartee, a rendezvous, repartee's daughter, Morticia. And she was by champion Brandwin New Legacy, which was a double up on the tomfoolery side of our pedigree. She was an incredibly sound bitch, very, very typey, a fun bitch to own. Not the best producer in the world. She, I think, had one litter. And
Who was your best producer?
well, I would have to say Maggie, who produced 5 champions, and repartee, who produced 4, who only had 8 living puppies, so 4 out of 8 ain't bad.
Right.
Of course, her most famous offspring was champion impromptu Ricochet, pictured here with champion impromptu Burnt Norton. and that again was a litter brother to Rendezvous, and the third from that litter was Rock on Tour, who was owned out in Texas. And then her fourth champion was champion Impromptu Kudos, who was a smallish dog. I guess maybe he was about 24 at the shoulder, but probably he was much smaller than the dogs that were being shown at the time. In fact, he had 14 5-point major reserves before he finished. Okay, Mingus's champion Impromptu Mingus Dynasty. We don't have any pictures of Mingus. We never got any. He died at 2. And we really never got any good pictures of him. But he did produce a few really neat litters that I've based my line on. And basically the line is based on the cross between Repartee and Mingus children. And this was champion Impromptu Instant Carmen. And he was probably one of the prettiest headed dogs I've ever seen. He was by Mingus out of Crownwell Midnight Mood's litter sister. And he produced some very, very interesting dogs. He had sporadic infertility. He really did not produce during the summer, but he was fertile during the winter, so he had a mixed bag. And this was his sister, who we sold. What? You like that one?
Literally and figuratively.
Figuratively, yes. This was Impromptu Fan Dancer, who was a litter sister to Instant Carmen. This was a very pivotal bitch in our breeding. She was by Instant Carmen. This is Impromptu the Sorceress, who was out of a Kudos daughter, Impromptu Magic. And Magic was out of Impromptu Sunshine Showers, who was a litter sister to Instant Carmen. So it was a very inbred typey bitch. This is also the bitch that Paige Elliott uses for her skeleton, and particularly the shoulder layback and for movement. And this was the sorceress pictured with Edith Levine when she was judging her. An incredibly sound bitch who was about as closely inbred as I could get. And I took the sorceress and I bred her to champion Viley's Platinum Plutonium, which was my first big outcross. And I got Impromptu the Haunting. And the Haunting, when bred back to a very closely inbred Kudos son out of an Instant Carmen daughter, produced Impromptu Apogee of the Moon, Kit, who hated dog shows. But when I took this outcross bitch back to them, I got the present dogs that we have, Champion Impromptu, Banner Still Waves, Dam, and we were able to produce that. This was a Champion Impromptu, the Silver Bullet, who was from a bitch that I bought from Carol Stanley after Hours Ingenue, a really pretty blue bitch called Shasta, who was by Impromptu Brown Bomber. And the Bomber was by Laurel and After Hours, Champion Laurel and After Hours, out of a Repartee daughter. And interestingly, there's not too much that comes down from him except for the bitch outside, which was Impromptu Snicksnack. Okay. This is Champion Impromptu Banner Still Waves. As a puppy. He was 7 months old in this picture. This was Buster, as we call him. at the National, the year that he was winner's dog in Detroit. This was Buster as a 3-year-old. And of course, this is him as a head study of him. This is one of Buster's sons, Impromptu Make My Day. And Make My Day was out of Impromptu Credit, who was by champion Debonair de Bloom, out of Bannister Wave's Dam litter sister. And he produced his litter sister produced the dog that I'm showing right now, who is Impromptu the Entertainer, who is a result of my newest outcross to champion Sealor's Grand Applause. His dam was Impromptu Visa, and Visa, bred to Sealor's Grand Applause, produced Sammy the Entertainer. I've done the cross another time, taking champion Impromptu Bannister Wave's litter sister, Impromptu Naughty Lady, again to champion Sealor's Grand Applause, and this is Impromptu Ruby Ruby. And these are the dogs that we have now. I'm beginning to do the cross back again into my own line, and also taking bitches, inbred bitches, to Sammy, and we're seeing what we're going to produce. That's it.
Now, in terms of what you're doing today,
Yes.
objectively as one can be about one's own breeding program, where do you think you are?
Midway. I think breeding is always a step. It's a production. It is never a finished picture. When I produced the perfect collie, then I think I quit. Because then I've produced the masterpiece, but I'm still in the process of producing, of painting the picture.
Barbara, we'll continue this dialogue and this conversation. We'd also like to have you recollect, talk a little bit about your collie memorabilia, the art, the photos, the paintings, the bronzes, if you will. And I hope that we might get an overall look at, quote, the farm.
Oh, sure. Take you on a tour.
And then I'd like to discuss with you some of the nutritional aspects, the work that you've been doing, your work with fertility or infertility and the stud dog. I think that would be of great interest. So those are some upcoming segments. Who do we have here, Barbara?
This is Impromptu the Entertainer, who is just turning 3 and has 1 major. And he is by champion Sealor's Grand Applause out of Impromptu Visa, who is a champion Impromptu Bannister Wave son. Sammy? Hi, Sam. Oh. Good girl. Oh, don't wiggle. Oh, now we're going to scratch. Come on. Oh. This is Impromptu Creole, who is by Impromptu the Bandit out of Impromptu Stick Snack. She's a very inbred bitch. And she's 5.5 months old. And she's going to scratch. Oh, Creole, get up. Good girl. Come on. Come on. You're gonna watch your things? Get the butterfly. Get the butterfly. Get the butterfly.
Ruby.
This is Impromptu Ruby Ruby.
Ruby.
Ruby. Ruby, get the girl. Ruby. Oh, stay. Good girl. This is by Champion Sealord. No. Come on, don't be a silly girl. Sealord's Grand Applause out of Impromptu Naughty Lady, who is a litter sister to Champion Impromptu Banner Still Waves.
Oh, shake.
No, don't. Silly girl. Come on, Ruby.
All right, and here we have an excellent example of your inbreeding of the impromptu type.
Right. This is Impromptu the Bandit, who's just 3 years old, totally out of coat because this is summer. And he is by Impromptu Make My Day, who is a Banner Still Waves son out of a Banner Still Waves litter sister, Impromptu, the Blue Bitch, Skitty. And of course we've got fly bites on the ears. He doesn't look his best, but this is the head type that I like. The lay back a shoulder that I want. And this is the outcross that we're going to be doing soon. Hi, Bandit. Is there a girl? These are some of the statues and various memorabilia which we have collected. This is the first in the working group that Norton won. These are some antique old statues that we picked up at flea markets. This I bought at a flea market and from a little old lady who was selling it for very cheaply, and I've discovered it's very valuable. It's a German piece. And up there is the first trophy that Repartee ever won. Oh, first, this is Martin's Jack Russell Terrier statue. This is a John Ems painting done in 1895. It is an original that I managed to trade for. This is a copy of a Maud Earl painting, a signed copy. I believe Sally Futh owns the original. And this is a pewter that is of Champion Beau's Dark Legacy, of which there was a limited edition.
Level. Hold it level. The doggy, hold it level.
Isn't it?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
There you go.
This is a bronze Carl that is dated 1907. It's an Austrian piece of two collies, which I found fascinating. They look so modern. And this is the first piece that Virginia Gardner ever did. This is number 1. And it was because Virginia's a dear friend of mine, and I talked her into starting doing collie work. And she gave me this. And the other pieces, this is a Phelps, whose work I think is just so exquisite. I think that's it. Of course, a visit to my favorite things would not be complete without seeing the Best in Show Bowl that was won by champion Impromptu Burnt Norton. This is from the Pennsylvania Kennel Club Albridge show, and Tom Cohen was handling. It was his first handling assignment as a professional. These are the trophies that the various Impromptu Collies have won over the years. It's a lot of silver polish.
Well, now I'd like to discuss in a little bit more detail Barbara Schwartz, the writer. Barb, I know over the years that you've written for a number of publications, for the Q's and the Gazette, the Review, and the Variety. You've done a number of pieces for the Bulletin, and you've written for Collie Club of America. Your books, I understand you'll be having some upcoming pieces for Collie Expression. What have been some of your concerns, the articles that you've written? I know you've done a lot of work in nutritional areas and dog fertility problems. Could you elaborate a little bit for us?
I think that everything that I have ever gotten into, I have been forced to get into because I've run into the problem. And I'm not one who easily gives up. And nutrition, we ran into an ethoxyquin problem with our dogs. And I had to find out what was causing the problem that we were having, and basically isolated it to ethoxyquin. We, when it came to reproduction, my problem the last time that we ran into it was caused by ethoxyquin, and I was able to work with a wonderful veterinarian by the name of Dr. Mary Wakeman, who's done a great deal of work. She's in Connecticut on male sterility, and also get in touch with Bobby Roos, who's my dear friend, and have used all of her old formulas. And just picked her brains every time I can, which is about once a week. And every other problem that we've run into has been because I've hit the problem, not because I've wanted to investigate a new topic.
And hence, Impromptu?
Impromptu.
I understand that you have been and will be working with Rachel Page Elliott.
Yes. Paige Elliott and I met in 1972, and I attended an all-breed seminar that she gave on movement, in which she said that collie movement was incorrectly written in the standard and that there was no such thing as a good collie moving. And I was sitting with my Doberman friends who promptly had to sit on my lap to keep me in my seat. At the end of the speech, I accosted her and made her come up and film my dogs. And we have been friends ever since. She is the most knowledgeable woman I have ever met. She has accomplished more than anyone I've ever known, and she is a woman who is in her 70s, who has an incredible curiosity and an insatiable search for knowledge, and is always into new endeavors. And to be able to work with her and with her, the material that she's collected in the future is going to be quite a challenge.
I, of course, have a great deal of respect for Miss Elliott, and I think it's a wonderful thing that you are doing this, and it certainly is going to be a contribution to our knowledge. You know, when we've been off camera, and quite frequently this happens, we get some memorable experiences and some pretty good laughs. Earlier in the day, during one of our periods of off camera, you were recounting some hilarious experiences that you've had along the way, and especially regarding our mutual friend Norton.
Well, Champion Impromptu Norton was our karmas did not mesh, because whenever Norton and I got together, horrendous things always happened. Number one, Norton was for sale as a puppy, and I could not sell him as a $50 pet. We had him advertised in the New York Times. Edith and I was staying at Edith Levine's house. We tried to sell the dog, and we could not sell him for $50. And so he had to make the trip out to Oklahoma with me. When he was a year old, he was going through the horror stages of young males that, things came out of the walls and things flew over the ground and you got terrified. And I had broken my back and had to go buy a new dress. And I took Norton Christmas shopping with me to do this. It was just right before Christmas in Lawton, Oklahoma. And I came out of the dress store, and on the corner was a blind man blowing his saxophone, and he had a white German Shepherd guard dog. Well, we came through the door, and the German Shepherd guard dog saw Norton, who promptly leaped behind me. The blind man's dog bit me in the leg, but he was tied to the saxophone, which flew through the air and conked me on the head. And these are Norton stories. I mean, there's just innumerable of them.
Well, of course, I suppose we shouldn't really laugh at that, but it is funny.
Well, it was funny in retrospect. I didn't think it was very funny when I was getting bitten. I thought, you can't impound a blind man's dog.
Can you recall any other incidents involving?
Oh, well, there was the time that I was driving down the road to go to the veterinarian and had Norton in my car in Oklahoma, and my veterinarian at the time was racing greyhounds, and I was on a major highway, and I pulled off to the side because I tried to catch two of his that were loose, and I cornered them only to have Norton leap out of the window and land in his septic pool. That was a Norton story. There's just one right after another. He and I did not mesh. I had to sell the dog. I couldn't live with him. One of us would have died. Hal, a moment ago we were talking about Rachel Page Elliott, and I believe that she now thinks the Collies are probably one of the soundest moving dogs around. She was instrumental in getting our standard to say that dogs single track behind instead of moving parallel. And she has been one of our greatest fans of our breed, and has pointed out time and time again because of that.
Well, Barb, thanks for recollecting that. A very important point indeed. And as long as we're doing an update, I do want to mention that the article "Unpardonable Faults" has been published in a dozen breed magazines, with probably more to come. I think at this point we've discussed many things, many topics, and many concerns. I think now is the time to ask you, are there dividends being in the breed, being with the members of this fancy?
Yeah, and I think the primary dividend is the absolutely wonderful, interesting, you might say even idiocentric people that you've gotten to meet in the breed. You wouldn't be in the breed, or you wouldn't be breeding dogs and showing dogs if you weren't somewhat competitive and somewhat egocentric, because everybody thinks their dog is the best. But people like Betty Crawford and Bobby Roos, the Honicks, Florence, Cummings, Steve Field, Glenn Twyford, I mean, just innumerable great people that have helped me, taught me, laughed with me, cried with me. One of my favorite people of all time is George Horn, who is one of my dearest friends, and whose opinion I have gone to for critiques of my own dogs, just in what dogs to keep and what dogs not to keep.
You and George always agree.
We never agree, but
Is that part of the great friendship?
it's part of the great friendship, but we also have a great respect for each other's knowledge. So, and we also laugh a lot. We won't take it too seriously, which I think is very important. Dot Girth was just a a wonderful lady to know and had so much knowledge to give. And the thing that I think is so great is that all of these people are open for you to talk to. You can call them, you can ask them. They'll be glad to help you. They're just warm, and you share a bond with them, because everybody, if you've been in collies longer than 10 minutes, has problems, or in any breed you have problems, and these are people you can go to get help from.
Are you saying winning isn't everything?
Winning is just a little bit of it. I don't even like to go in the dog show ring. I would much prefer to stay home and breed my dogs and play with my dogs and do the painting rather than do have the show. You have to have the show to see if you're on the right track, but I really do prefer to stay home and do the creating.
Do you have any observations about the contemporary scene?
Oh, I guess it's not any different than what everybody has been saying lately, that there are a great many more exhibitors rather than true dog people in it. That winning at any cost, breed to the great, the big dog this year, is the thing. It's never been one of my ambitions to have the annual champion. It's just.
Haven't we always had this element, though, breed to the dog of the
year?
The
dog of the minute? Yeah, I suspect that's true. But with the greater proliferation of a single dog, because transportation is better, frozen semen, all of the innovations that they have now, I think that the propensity for a single animal to do great harm to a breed or to perpetuate a particular fault is much more dangerous today than it ever has been.
Okay, I'm a new part of the fancy. It's my first year. How would you like to see me get started? What would you suggest to the beginner?
I think that you should get as good a bitch as you can, but before you do that, you have to go to dog shows and you have to study and read your breed magazines and your old histories of dogs, and you have to make the decision of what the collie that you want is to look like. And then you try and find a breeder who has the closest to your own image, at which point you go to them and put yourself in their hands, which is what I did with Edith Levine. I loved the way Edith's dogs looked, and if that meant that I had to carry her water buckets at every dog show, then I did it. It was very much an apprentice-master tutelage. I think today too many people coming into it, A, will not give the respect due their masters, the people who helped them and started them, and B, are in too much of a hurry. And blame the other person for anything that goes wrong. Well, nobody sets out to breed a defective animal. Nobody wants to foster a defective animal on anyone else. And I think that the people, instead of being so negative and antagonistic toward one another, really should work with one another.
You believe that generally we don't recognize the limiting factors of Mother Nature?
Yeah, I think we don't. No one invented PRA. No one invented collie eye problem. Nobody invented DM. And it's going to take everybody working together and being very open about what problems they have to work through it or to make it controllable. As far as DM is concerned, I'm not even sure that we know how it is inherited or whether it is not a genetic trait that is influenced by the environment. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it. The other thing that I think we have to keep in mind is that we are also raising collies. They are not terriers that have to be constantly on attention and on guard. We are raising a herding breed, and it should be shown as such and appreciated for such.
Well, Barb, I want to thank you for our visit
Thank you
today.
for coming.
We've walked through a few of these scenes during the course of our stay today, and I'd like to close our impromptu conversation and our impromptu visit with a walkthrough, a literal walkthrough. Again, thanks very much.
Nice to have you. Thank you for coming.